Evelyn Harper raised her son alone in a fourth-floor walk-up in Brooklyn. The building smelled like boiled cabbage in winter and hot pavement in summer. The elevator hadn't worked since 1998. The radiator hissed like it was angry at the world. But inside apartment 4B, there was love. When Daniel was born at NYU Langone Health, the nurse placed him in Evelyn's arms and said, "He's got strong lungs." She laughed through tears. "Good, he'll need them." Because Daniel didn't come into an easy life. His father left before his first birthday, moved to Los Angeles with a new girlfriend and a promise to send money. The money came twice. After that, it was just Evelyn and Daniel. She worked double shifts at a diner near Times Square. She missed sleep. She missed holidays. She missed doctor appointments for herself. But she never missed anything for him. Parent-teacher conferences, science fairs, Little League games at Prospect Park. Daniel used to run into her arms after every game. "Did you see that, Mom?" "I saw everything," she'd say. And she meant it. By the time Daniel got accepted into Columbia University, Evelyn had arthritis in both knees and a credit card maxed out beyond reason. She never told him she took out a second mortgage. She never told him she skipped her own medication for 3 months to cover his textbooks. She told him only this: "You go change the world." And he did. Finance degree, internship on Wall Street, 6-figure job by 26. He moved to a luxury high-rise in Manhattan with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view Evelyn had only seen in postcards. At first, he called every Sunday, then every other Sunday, then only on holidays. "Work's crazy, Mom." She understood. She always understood. Until the day she met her. Her name was Charlotte Whitmore. She was everything Evelyn wasn't. Born into old money from Greenwich, boarding school graduate, daughter of a real estate developer who owned half of Stamford. The first time Evelyn met her was at an upscale restaurant near Central Park. Evelyn wore her best navy dress from Macy's. She had her hair done at a discount salon in Brooklyn. Charlotte wore quiet luxury, the kind that doesn't need labels because the price is whispered. During dinner, Charlotte smiled politely, but asked questions like she was conducting an interview. "So, Evelyn, what do you do?" "I wait tables." "Oh." That "oh" carried a lifetime of judgment. Daniel squeezed Charlotte's hand under the table. Evelyn saw it, and something inside her shifted. When Daniel proposed on a rooftop overlooking the skyline of New York City, Charlotte posted the video online. Thousands of likes. Champagne, a 3-carat ring, a caption, "Future Mrs. Whitmore Harper." Evelyn learned about the engagement from social media, not from her son. When she finally called him, he sounded distracted. "Yeah, Mom, I was gonna tell you." "You forgot?" "No, things have been busy." Busy. She swallowed the ache. "I'm happy for you," she said, and she meant that too. The wedding was to be held at a private estate in the Hamptons, 300 guests, white orchids flown in from overseas, a string quartet from Juilliard School. Evelyn offered to help pay. Daniel laughed gently. "Mom, it's covered." Covered. By Charlotte's family. Weeks passed. No invitation arrived. She told herself it was lost in the mail. Then came the email at 2:17 a.m. "Mom, Charlotte thinks it might be awkward if you attend. Her family is very traditional. We'll celebrate separately later." Awkward. Her existence awkward. She read the message over and over in her dim kitchen while the refrigerator hummed. 42 years. She remembered holding his feverish body at 3 a.m., working Christmas Eve so he could have gifts, selling her wedding ring to pay his tuition deposit. Awkward. She didn't cry at first. She sat very still. Then she did something unexpected. She replied, "Okay." That was it. No anger, no begging, no guilt. Just okay. Daniel didn't call. Not that day, not the next. On the wedding day, Evelyn woke at 6 a.m. She made coffee. She wore the navy dress anyway. And instead of going to the Hamptons, she took the subway downtown. She walked past Brook Bridge and stood watching the skyline her son now belonged to. She whispered, "I release you." It wasn't weakness. It was strength. But the story doesn't end there, because weddings built on silence have a way of collapsing, and secrets, especially in families with money, don't stay buried. The ceremony began at 4 p.m. sharp at a private waterfront estate in the Hamptons. White roses lined the aisle. Crystal chandeliers were suspended from a glass tent. Guests stepped out of black SUVs wearing designer suits and silk gowns. Daniel stood at the altar, jaw tight, smile rehearsed. He kept scanning the rows of chairs. Row 1, Charlotte's parents. Row 2, investment bankers. Row 3, political donors. No navy dress. No mother. The officiant asked, "Who gives this woman?" Charlotte's father, Richard Whitmore, stood proudly. Daniel swallowed something heavy. The ceremony was flawless. The applause was loud. The photographs were perfect. But something inside him felt off. At the reception, champagne flowed like a river. A string quartet from Juilliard School played softly while guests mingled under fairy lights. Daniel was pulled into conversation after conversation. "So impressive, young man. Welcome to the Whitmore family. You're a lucky guy." He smiled on command. Then he overheard something that made his stomach drop. Two older men stood near the bar. "Did you hear? They kept his mother away." Of course, can't have a diner waitress in family photos when the merger's about to be announced. Daniel froze. Merger? He stepped closer. The Whitmores are consolidating before the Stanford deal closes. Image is everything. Stanford. The Whitmores owned major real estate in Stanford and were expanding aggressively into luxury developments across Manhattan. Daniel worked in finance. He understood strategy. This wasn't about tradition. It was about optics, about erasing anything that didn't match the brand, including his mother. Later that evening, Charlotte approached him with 2 glasses of champagne. "You look tense." "I just found out my mother wasn't invited because of business optics." Charlotte's smile flickered for half a second. "Daniel, don't start this tonight." "Answer me." She set the glasses down. "My father's investors are conservative. Your background complicates things." "My background?" "You grew up in a 4th-floor walk-up in Brooklyn. That's not exactly the image we're building." "We're building." He felt something cold crawl up his spine. "And the prenup?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "It protects family assets." "Does it say anything about my mother?" Silence. That silence was the answer. 3 months earlier, Charlotte's father had added a private clause. If Daniel publicly embarrassed the Whitmore family, if any scandal surfaced that affected brand perception, he would forfeit partnership stakes in the upcoming real estate expansion in New York City. And Evelyn, a working-class single mother, didn't fit the narrative of old money elegance. She was seen as risk. At 8:45 p.m., it was time for the groom speech. Daniel stood under golden lights. 300 guests turned towards him. He looked at Charlotte. She smiled confidently. He looked at Richard Whitmore. Calculating eyes. Then Daniel did something no one expected. He cleared his throat. "Thanking all for coming. Tonight is supposed to be about love, unity, and family. Polite a pause. But I've learned something important today. Charlotte's fingers tightened around her bouquet. I learned that some families believe love is conditional, that image matters more than loyalty. A ripple moved through the crowd. Daniel continued. I was raised by a woman who worked double shifts near Times Square so I could stand here tonight. Murmurs. She wasn't invited, not because she did anything wrong, but because she didn't look the part. Gasps. Charlotte whispered sharply, Daniel, stop. He didn't. If my mother is too embarrassing for this family, then maybe I'm in the wrong family. The room went silent. Even the ocean waves beyond the tent seemed to pause. Daniel set the microphone down. He removed his wedding ring, placed it on the head table. Reporters from a society blog covering Hampton's weddings caught the moment on camera. By midnight, the video was trending across New York City's social media circles. Headlines read, Wall Street groom rejects bride at reception. Hampton's wedding meltdown. Richard Whitmore's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Investors don't like unpredictability, and nothing is more unpredictable than a man who chooses his mother over money. Evelyn was washing dishes in her quiet apartment when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Mom? Daniel's voice cracked. She froze. Are you okay? She asked immediately. He let out a shaky breath. I'm coming home. Home? That word hadn't left his lips in years. At 1:30 a.m., a black car stopped outside her building in Brooklyn. Daniel stepped out, tuxedo wrinkled, eyes red. He climbed 4 flights of stairs like he used to as a boy. When she opened the door, he didn't speak. He just hugged her. Tightly. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what? For ever thinking you were something to hide. Evelyn closed her eyes. She didn't say, I told you so. She didn't mention the email. She simply held her son. Because mothers don't need public apologies. They need truth. The next morning, Whitmore Developments lost 2 investors. By the end of the week, the Stanford expansion was under review. And Charlotte? She gave an exclusive interview blaming Daniel's emotional instability. But she underestimated something. Evelyn had spent 20 years serving powerful people at diner tables. She had heard secrets. She knew stories. And sometimes, the quietest women hold the most dangerous information. By Monday morning, the video was everywhere. From finance blogs covering Wall Street to gossip pages in New York City, headlines replayed Daniel's words on a loop. If my mother is too embarrassing for this family, then maybe I'm in the wrong family. Whitmore Developments issued a brief statement calling it a private family matter. But investors hate drama, and drama had just gone viral. The woman who served coffee. Back in her apartment in Brooklyn, Evelyn didn't check the news. She was making oatmeal when Daniel walked into the kitchen. He hadn't slept. You didn't have to do that, she said gently. Yes, I did. He sat across from her at the tiny wooden table he'd grown up at. Mom, I think I walked into something bigger than a wedding. She raised an eyebrow. Business? He nodded. Charlotte's father is rushing a major development deal tied to Stamford and a luxury high-rise project in Manhattan. The investors are nervous. They need stability. And you walking out didn't look stable. Exactly. Evelyn stirred her tea slowly. For 20 years, she had worked late shifts at a diner 2 blocks from Times Square. Wall Street analysts, real estate moguls, political aides. They talked freely over coffee. They assumed the waitress didn't matter. They assumed she wasn't listening. They were wrong. The conversation she never forgot. 2 years earlier, Richard Whitmore had come into the diner with a man named Arthur Klein, a private equity partner. They took the booth by the window. Evelyn remembered because Whitmore complained about the coffee temperature. She refilled it twice, and while she stood nearby pretending to wipe the counter, she heard something interesting. Bridge loan from offshore accounts, temporary shell acquisition, inflate preliminary occupancy numbers. At the time, she didn't understand everything, but she understood tone. It wasn't clean. And when Whitmore paid the bill, he left no tip. That part she remembered clearly. "Daniel," she said carefully, "what would happen if investors thought occupancy numbers were inflated?" He looked at her sharply. "That would be securities fraud." She held his gaze. "Then you might want to look at the early leasing reports for the Stamford property." His heartbeat quickened. "How do you know about that project?" She smiled faintly. "People talk when they think you're invisible." Within 48 hours, Daniel quietly contacted a former colleague at his firm near Wall Street. They reviewed public filings. Projected occupancy, 82%. Actual pre-leases confirmed, closer to 51%. That gap wasn't minor. It was catastrophic. If proven intentional, it could trigger federal investigation, and Daniel's name, as the future son-in-law and potential executive partner, would be attached. Charlotte hadn't just married him, she'd positioned him. 3 days later, Richard Whitmore requested a private meeting at his Manhattan office overlooking the skyline of New York City. The office was all glass and chrome. Evelyn insisted on coming. "She doesn't belong here," Whitmore said when he saw her. Daniel responded calmly, "Neither do fraudulent numbers." Silence fell heavy in the room. Whitmore adjusted his cufflinks. "You have no proof." Evelyn stepped forward. "I may not understand spreadsheets, but I understand patterns, and I remember conversations." Whitmore's eyes narrowed. She continued, "You discussed offshore bridge loans at a diner near Times Square. You mentioned temporary shell acquisitions." His jaw tightened. "You're a waitress." "Yes," she said, "which is why you never noticed I was listening." Whitmore realized something critical. If Daniel publicly questioned the filings, especially after the viral wedding incident, regulators would look closer. Investors were already nervous. One formal inquiry could collapse the Stamford deal. The Manhattan expansion would freeze, and the Whitmore name, built over decades, would be tarnished. He tried a different tone. "What do you want?" Daniel glanced at his mother. Evelyn answered. "Nothing." Whitmore blinked. "Excuse me?" "We don't want your money. We don't want your partnership. We don't want your image." Daniel stood taller. "We just want distance." That evening, Charlotte showed up unannounced at the Brooklyn apartment. No designer heels, no camera crew, just red eyes and shaking hands. "You ruined everything," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No, the truth did." She turned to Evelyn. "You think you won? You don't understand this world." Evelyn looked around her small kitchen. "You're right. I don't understand a world where a mother is considered a liability." Charlotte's voice cracked. "You embarrassed us." Evelyn replied softly, "No, dear. You embarrassed yourselves." Within weeks, financial reporters in New York City began asking questions about Whitmore Development's occupancy projections. Investors paused funding. The Stamford project was officially delayed. Charlotte's father issued another statement citing market conditions. But insiders knew the truth. Confidence was gone. And confidence is everything in real estate. One evening, Daniel and Evelyn walked across Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. The skyline glowed gold. "Mom," said Daniel quietly, "I almost traded you for status." She squeezed his hand. "But you didn't." "I lost a fortune." She smiled. "You kept your integrity." They stood watching the city that had shaped them both. Money builds towers, character builds foundations, and foundations don't crumble when storms come. Months later, Daniel received an unexpected offer from a competing development firm, one that valued transparency, one that admired his public stand. And the condition? They wanted him and the story behind him. Because in a city like New York City, authenticity is rarer than gold.